There we go. I love it. All right, guys. So, hey, let's get right into it. The talk, of course, yesterday, Shohei Ohtani on the mound for the first time this spring. Dave Roberts, after the game, said he was surprised how crisp, how good he looked early on. Fabian, you were there. What were your impressions of Shohei's first start this spring?
Yeah, he didn't look like a guy who was making his first start of the spring. I think that's the best way to put it. Is obviously, like, this isn't the first time he's faced hitters. He threw a live session before going to WBC, threw a couple times against hitters while there. But the fact that he was there, we weren't able to really get a good look at it. We weren't able to have a good idea of like where his buildup was at, where things kind of looked. But obviously, the fact that he was able to touch 99.9, the fact that the breaking stuff looked so good, that curveball looked on point. I think the only thing he had any frustration with at all was maybe the splitter wasn't doing what he wanted it to do in 2-strike counts. But if that's your biggest issue in your first spring outing, where you're able to get through 4 innings and touch the 5th the way that he did, like it's everything the Dodgers could have wanted and more. And he looks ready to go for the start of the season, which he'll have one more outing in the Freeway Series before his regular season as pitcher starts.
And you asked me after the game about the importance of getting to 25 starts this season. I thought it was a pretty interesting response from him there.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think it's one of those things that, as much as like he's talked about wanting to be ready as a pitcher this season, he's really talked about wanting to be a Cy Young candidate, wanting to sort of be in the mix. And I think that's something he's definitely took head on as a challenge, and we've seen that in the past with Ohtani, where he sort of sets a goal for the future and really goes after it. But this is one that, in order for him to do that, he's going to have to basically go wire to wire, especially with how the Dodgers are going to be willing to skip a start here and there, willing to give him some extra rest here and there, just knowing that he's doing both. So he's going to have to really be ready to go from the jump, maximize the amount of starts he's had. He's only made more than 23 starts this season one time, and that was in 2022. And it's something that he sort of had an interesting answer on. He basically said, like, yeah, I think that's a benchmark. It's a benchmark for a lot of starting pitchers, and that's one of those things where he's not going to force it, but like that's clearly something that he would like to accomplish, and I think is definitely feasible if you're sort of looking and projecting out health for him.
Yeah, I think you consider being in the WBC, getting some work done over there, but going 4 1/3 innings, 61 pitches, entering the 5th inning, had a couple walks, hit a batter. But Jerry, you had to be very impressed with that outing. What was your biggest takeaway?
How ready he is. Yeah, I was surprised that he went 61 pitches. You know, I thought maybe in the ballpark of 40 to possibly 45. And yes, he did pitch in that simulated game against Samurai Japan when he was in the WBC. But all it tells me is that, and we all know this, Shohei Ohtani makes sure that he's ready. He makes sure that he has a strict regimen, not just during the season, but also in the off season and prior to the regular season. So he made sure that his arm, his body was ready to pitch. We knew that, you know, hitting wise, he was going to be ready. We saw it on full display in the WBC, but pitching wise, just making sure that his body, his arm was on point. And I'm not going to say I was surprised, but usually you could pitch, 45, 50 pitches. Sometimes the command is not there. The command was there. So he really was, I shouldn't say I'm surprised, but he was pretty much locked in. And yeah, he may not have that splitter the way he wants, but come on, man. I mean, you don't really have that feel for that pitch until arguably 3 or 4 or 5 starts in, just playing with guys that use that splitter. So Shohei Ohtani, just like Yamamoto, just like a lot of guys on this Dodger team, they don't like being surprised, man. They want to make sure that they're going to be extremely ready or as ready as possible in spring training and in the regular season. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to have success all the time, but that's not going to be a reason why they don't have success. They're going to make sure they're going to be ready. And for Shohei Ohtani to be that sharp in his first spring outing, it's not a surprise to me. And for him to go out and make 25 starts, I know that is the goal. I can't say he can't do it because we've all seen Shohei Ohtani, when you challenge him to do something, he exceeds that challenge.
Yeah, 28 starts in 2022, 166 innings pitched, finished 4th in the Cy Young voting. That's kind of the buzz right now, is can he get close to being in contention for this Cy Young? We know that that's definitely a big topic, but I want to ask you, Fabian, what that does to kind of impact the roster, knowing that he's as stretched out as he already is, throwing 99, feeling comfortable out there. Last season, we saw essentially building up in a big league game while he's also hitting one inning at a time. What does that do for the roster, knowing that you don't have to rely on as many bullpen games or swing men or guys like that just to start the season if you can get them close to 5 or 6 innings early on in the year?
I think it's one of those things where maybe that's a reason why we see someone like Kyle Hurt now on the roster, where you don't necessarily have to carry another multi-inning reliever along with a Ben Kasparius type, just because you don't have to worry about that for a long stretch of the season. And then early on in the season, I think it maybe opens the door for Justin Robleski to stay stretched out even more, like where he's not needed to be one of those multi-inning relievers. And maybe Robleski starts the season as a reliever. That's why I have him on our roster projection right now. But as a stretched out long reliever who, when that 12th game of the season starts, the first time they need a sixth starter, can sort of fit right into that spot.
Yeah, and I think that when you mention it that way, it's like a million things that Shohei does for this team on top of everything. And I heard Dave tell you guys on Sportsnet that, yeah, Shohei's always going to deliver. Like, breaking news, Shohei Ohtani does something great, right? But what I want to get you guys' thoughts on is this. He's not batting yesterday. And we know that maybe that's a nothing burger. Is it something that you think they could be tinkering with? Maybe a little deeper into the season, when you look at guys that could be DHing, days when he pitches, you kind of see those splits there. I mean, do you guys think there's anything there? Do you think I might be looking a little too much into it?
That's a question I asked Dave Roberts yesterday. It was like, obviously, there was very clearly like a build-up maneuver yesterday. But like, is this something that where if he sort of comes to you, he's like, hey, I can start, but like I need a day for my legs. Like, is this something you guys be open to doing? He didn't close the door. I don't think they'll do that often, if at all. But if like the fact that the door is not necessarily like the door is open on that, obviously gives you some interesting possibilities for down the line. Because obviously, you want Shohei Ohtani's bat in the lineup as much as possible. But if you are in a situation where he does need a day, obviously that does give you an opportunity to get Will Smith off his feet, get Freddie Freeman off his feet. It's an interesting thing to play with, but obviously, if you're in that spot, that means you're deep enough into the season with Ohtani at good health that a lot of things have gone right to that point.
I agree. I agree with that assessment. I mean, I think it's just a day, and that happens in August when he's had so many at bats. It's a hot day, and you say, we're going to get him off his feet, so to speak, in a lineup and make sure that he just focuses on pitching. I could see that if we're somewhere playing in August and it's going to be a 95-degree day and you do that, but it's not going to be a norm. He's used to doing this as far as pitching and hitting at the same time. So I don't see that happening more than twice throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly a lot of opportunities with Muncy and Smith and Rushing and Teo, and there's opportunities for Freddie. Who knows? I mean, with Rushing playing first and catcher, there's a lot of opportunities there. But I know it's a small sample, but it wasn't necessarily the days that he was pitching. 18 games, hit 246, did slug 638. But it was the days after he pitched. 4 for 33, hit 121. The numbers were just a little down. The fatigue is certainly there. Fabian, from your days covering show with the Angels, kind of what do you make of just the post-start version of Shohei just as a hitter after that?
Well, remember the early version of him was he would have the day off before and afterwards. Yeah. And that was something that obviously was designed to keep him healthy. It clearly didn't. And Joe Madden, when he sort of came in 2021, basically said, hey, to heck with that. Like, we're just going to sort of throw the book and like let him sort of prove that he can't do this. And he's kind of gone that way ever since. I don't think they'll go back to where it was early in his Angels days also, because then you're cutting way too much into his at-bats and stuff like that. But it's one of those things that's going to ultimately come down to Shohei Ohtani communicating with the coaching staff, communicating with Mark Pryor, having open line of communication, knowing his body, trusting his body. And that's something that the Dodgers have seemed to do pretty well with him the last couple of years. And obviously, it's a bigger test because it's his first full season doing both. So I think it's something that they'll have a feel for as the season goes on.
Yeah, the Angels the whole day before, day after, and we know what Shohei is after this season. After seeing that first start, Jerry, is it more clear to you that he has his eyes set on the Cy Young?
I'm not going to say yes, because we know Shohei Ohtani is always more concerned about the team. Yes, individual accolades, if it happens, great. But he said when he got and signed with the Dodgers, it's all about